Hello and welcome to Synthetic History, where the past speaks again, but not through dusty archives or faded manuscripts. Here, we use generative AI tools to resurrect history's lost stories, forgotten places, silenced voices, and the echoes of time itself. This isn't just storytelling, it's a collaboration between human researchers and AI agents, weaving together historical fact and imagination with precision. Every episode is a bridge between what was and what could be remembered. And now, let's begin. Here's our new episode. What happens when faith is tested, not in private, but in the public square? When standing for truth comes at a cost, and silence feels safer? In Nazi Germany, churches faced a choice: speak out or stay silent. Resist or conform. Some stood courageously against injustice, risking prison and death. Others reshaped faith to fit ideology, aligning themselves with Hitler's vision. Most simply looked away. But history has a way of repeating itself. When power demands allegiance over truth, when compromise feels more convenient than conviction, we must ask ourselves, what would we have done? And what will we do now? This season on Synthetic History, we explore the stories of ordinary people, pastors, factory workers, students, who wrestled with faith, fear, and the choices that shaped a generation. While some figures are fictional, their struggles are deeply rooted in historical reality, drawing from in-depth research by AI agents and human co-authors. Join us as we uncover the moral dilemmas of the past, dilemmas that still echo today.
Episode 3: The Baker's Wife and the Hidden Bread. Munich, April 1933. Marta Klein was awake before dawn as always. The bakery's stone oven roared with heat, the scent of flour and yeast thick in the air. She worked in rhythm, kneading, shaping, scoring loaves, just as she had done every morning for the past 10 years. Through her small window, she could see the golden glow of torchlight as SA men marched through the streets, a common sight since Hitler had become Chancellor just 2 months earlier. She had seen them before, of course. At first, they had seemed like nothing more than another political group, but lately their presence had changed, more organised, more menacing. Just keep your head down, she told herself. It doesn't concern us. By sunrise, she and her husband Peter would open the shop, and the regulars would trickle in. Workers, shopkeepers, young mothers with their children tugging at their skirts. Most of her customers were ordinary Germans trying to make sense of the rapid changes sweeping across their country. It was a quiet life, an honest life. But lately even the bread tasted different. Not because of the ingredients, but because of the world outside. The streets of Munich had changed. Men in brown uniforms marched openly now, sometimes stopping to inspect shop owners' papers or question those who looked suspicious. The SA, Hitler's Sturmabteilung, or stormtroopers, had grown bolder since the Reichstag fire decree of February 28th had suspended civil liberties and given the government emergency powers. Neighbours whispered less and watched more. And then last week the sign had appeared on their door. A warning in plain sight. Marta still felt sick thinking about it. It had been nailed up overnight, just as it had in every other shop on their street. Part of the nationwide boycott of Jewish businesses organised by the Nazi Party for April 1st, 1933. Juden unerwünscht, Jews not welcome. The letters were thick and uneven, hastily painted in black. Marta ran her fingertips across them, feeling the rough grain of the wood beneath. Her stomach turned. In bakeries, department stores and doctors' offices across Germany, these signs were appearing, alongside stars of David painted in yellow and black, across windows and doors. She had turned to Peter, expecting him to be as horrified as she was, but he had only looked at her with tired eyes. "If we take it down, they'll come for us too," he had said. "The SA men are watching. They're taking photographs of anyone who still buys from Jewish shops. Some people have been beaten." "If we leave it up, we become them," she had whispered. He hadn't answered, and now every morning that sign sat on their door like a silent accusation, another small compromise in what was becoming a nation of compromises. The pastor's sermon. That Sunday, Marta sat stiffly in the wooden pew of St. Paul's Church, hands folded in her lap. The church was unusually full. Attendance had been growing since Hitler took power, as if people were searching for meaning in the whirlwind of political change. She listened as Pastor Wilhelm Brandt, a once soft-spoken man, now spoke with a new kind of fire. A small swastika pin glinted on his lapel, a recent addition. "God has given us a leader to restore our nation," he declared, "to bring us back to purity, strength, and divine order. The church must stand with our Führer as he purifies our land." Marta's gaze flickered across the congregation. A few people nodded along, lips pressed in grim agreement. Others sat stiffly, hands clasped, avoiding eye contact. Marta clenched her fists. She had grown up in this church. She had been baptized here. And yet, the words from the pulpit now felt like a stranger speaking in a language she no longer understood. Pastor Brandt had joined the German Christians movement, pastors who sought to align Christianity with Nazi ideology, removing what they called Jewish elements from their faith. Where was Christ in all of this? Where was mercy, justice, love for neighbour? 2 months ago, Brandt had preached from the Sermon on the Mount. Now he quoted selectively from Romans 13 about obeying authorities while ignoring Christ's commands to love one's enemies. She turned to Peter, hoping to see the same unease in his face. But he sat still, expressionless. When the service ended, she noticed a small pamphlet in the hymnal rack. It spoke of a Pastors' Emergency League being formed by clergymen like Martin Niemöller and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who opposed the Nazification of the church. She slipped it into her pocket. A knock at the back door. It happened late that night. Marta was cleaning the counters, the last of the day's flour dusting her hands, when she heard it. 3 sharp knocks at the back door. Through the small window, she could see the glow of searchlights in the distance. The Gestapo conducting one of their nighttime raids that had become common since the Enabling Act had given Hitler dictatorial powers in March. She froze. No one came to the back entrance, not unless they had nowhere else to go. If I help them, what happens to me? To Peter? She opened it cautiously. A woman stood there clutching a young boy to her chest. Her face was pale with fear. Her coat was dirty, torn at the hem. Marta recognised her instantly. Hannah Feldman. Marta had known her for years. Hannah had been a regular customer before the boycott, always bringing her son Daniel, who used to clutch a warm roll like it was the greatest treasure. She and her husband had owned the tailor shop down the street before the sign appeared on their door too. Jacob Feldman had been among the 100,000 German Jews who had served in the German army during the Great War, earning an Iron Cross for bravery. But that meant nothing now. The Feldman's shop had been marked with a Star of David, and SA men had stood outside, preventing customers from entering. But then they had vanished. Rumours said Jakob had been taken during one of the mass arrests that had swept up nearly 40,000 political opponents of the Reich in March and April. Now Hannah was standing in Marta's doorway, her son's face buried in her coat. "Please," Hannah whispered. "I have nowhere else to go. They took Jacob 3 days ago. I don't know where he is." Marta's breath caught. She knew what this meant. If she helped them, she was breaking the law. The new decrees had made it clear that anyone who aided enemies of the state would face the same punishment. If she turned them away, they would disappear, like the thousands of others who had been taken to the newly established concentration camp at Dachau, just outside Munich. Peter's voice cut through the silence. "Close the door, Marta." She turned. He stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. "If the police find them here, we will lose everything. Have you seen what they've done to people who help Jews? They're taken too." Marta looked back at Hannah. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from terror. Her son Daniel couldn't have been more than 7 years old, the same age as her brother had been when he died of influenza. Marta thought of the sign on her door, of Pastor Brandt's sermon, of all the neighbours who had turned away, who had told themselves they had no choice. The Nazis had successfully made complicity the safe choice, turning neighbours against each other in service to their ideology. But she had a choice. She stepped aside. "Come in." The decision. The bakery smelled of warm bread and honey, but Hannah sat trembling at the table. Daniel's eyes were large, watchful. He had seen too much for a child so young. Marta placed a small loaf in front of her. "Eat," she said. "You need strength." Hannah hesitated before breaking off a piece, giving it to her son first. Peter paced in the corner, rubbing his face. Outside they could hear boots on pavement. Another SA patrol, passing by. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he muttered. "The Reich is watching everyone. The Gestapo has informants everywhere. 3 days ago, they arrested hundreds of pastors from the confessing church just for opposing Nazi control of religion. If we are caught..." "Then let them come," Marta snapped. Peter stared at her. She had never spoken to him like that before. "I won't live in fear, Peter, and I won't be complicit. Pastor Brandt may have forgotten Christ's teachings, but I haven't. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me." Silence filled the room. Then something changed in his face. Perhaps it was the scripture she had quoted, or perhaps it was seeing Hannah's son clutching his mother's arm. Whatever the reason, Peter's shoulders slumped. Peter exhaled and sat down across from Hannah. "How long can you stay hidden?" he asked. Hannah looked at them both. "As long as God allows," she whispered. "Jacob and I never thought this could happen to us. We were Germans first, Jews second. We fought for this country, built our business here." Marta reached across the table and took Hannah's hand. "You still are Germans. It's Germany that has forgotten itself." And with that, a new kind of resistance began. In homes and businesses across Germany, similar scenes were playing out. Ordinary citizens making the dangerous choice to help their Jewish neighbours, risking arrest and imprisonment, not with weapons, not with speeches, but with bread, shelter, and quiet defiance. The unexpected betrayal. For the next few weeks, Hannah and her son stayed hidden in the bakery's storage room. Marta had created a false wall behind the flour sacks, a small space just large enough for 2 people to sleep. Marta and Peter took turns sneaking food to them, always careful, always watching the street before stepping outside. Peter had grown quieter, more nervous. The weekly Hitler Youth parades passed directly in front of their shop, and the local Nazi party officials had begun requiring shopkeepers to attend propaganda meetings. Then one morning the knocking came again, but this time it was not Hannah. It was the Gestapo. 2 men in leather coats, their faces expressionless. "Peter Klein, you are under investigation for harbouring fugitives." The colour drained from Marta's face. She turned to Peter, but it wasn't his expression that made her heart drop. It was the way he didn't look surprised. "Peter?" she whispered. His hands were shaking. He looked at her with regret, with shame. And then she knew. He had turned them in. The pressure at the meetings had been too much. Someone had noticed the extra bread disappearing, had seen Marta carrying packages to the storage room. "They were going to investigate us anyway," he whispered. "If we cooperated, they said they would be lenient." The cost of compromise. "Marta Klein, you are coming with us." The officers pushed inside, their boots loud against the floor. "Where is the woman?" one of them barked. "We know she's here. Your husband has confessed." Marta's stomach churned. She couldn't answer. She wouldn't answer. In that moment, she understood what Dietrich Bonhoeffer had meant in his sermon when he said that silence in the face of evil was itself evil. By saying nothing, she was saying everything. The lead officer grabbed her wrist. "Tell us now, or you'll be joining her wherever she's gone." Many have already been sent to Dachau for less. Marta closed her eyes. She had once believed that choosing silence would keep her safe, that if she kept her head down and obeyed, the darkness would pass her by. She knew now it only led to destruction, piece by piece, compromise by compromise, until nothing remained of one's soul. Her breath steadied. Her choice had already been made. She prayed that Hannah and Daniel had heard the commotion and found the small door she had shown them, the one that led to the alley behind the church. She lifted her chin and said nothing. In her silence was her final testimony. The last thing she saw before they dragged her outside was the unfinished loaves of bread on the counter. They would never be baked now. But somewhere, she hoped, Hannah and her son were running, were free, carrying with them the memory of a simple baker's wife who had found her courage at last. A small act of resistance in a nation consumed by hatred, a single light in the gathering darkness.
That's it for this episode of Synthetic History. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, help us keep these forgotten voices alive by sharing the podcast on social media and with anyone who loves history told in a new way. You can find Synthetic History on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep the past alive. See you in the next episode.